Why Eddie Munson's death changed the entire show. Eddie Munson's death wasn't just a shocking moment. It wasn't just a sad goodbye. It was the moment Stranger Things stopped being a safe story. Up until that point, the show lived in a balance. It was scary, but comforting. Dark, but familiar. We were always afraid, but never afraid enough. Eddie Munson changed that. When Eddie was first introduced, he didn't look like a character who would matter this much. He was loud, over the top, sarcastic, the kind of character television often uses for comic relief. But Eddie wasn't written to be disposable. From the very first episode he appeared in, Eddie represented something deeper, what it feels like to be an outsider in a town that refuses to understand you. Hawkins didn't just dislike Eddie. Hawkins decided who Eddie was, before the murders, before Vecna, before the truth mattered. To the town, Eddie Munson was already guilty. A metalhead, a drug dealer, a bad influence, someone to fear. And when fear takes control, logic disappears. That's what makes Eddie's story so uncomfortable to watch, because it feels real. Before Eddie, Stranger Things followed an unspoken rule. The danger was intense. The monsters were terrifying. But the core group always survived. New characters came and went, but the heart of the show felt protected. We trusted the story. Eddie broke that trust. For the first time, the show introduced a character who felt essential, and then took him away permanently. No last-minute rescue, no miracle, just loss. Eddie Munson spent most of his life running, not because he was weak, but because the world taught him that standing still was dangerous. Every rumor, every stare, every accusation told him the same thing: you don't belong here. Fear became part of Eddie's identity, and that's why his final choice mattered so much. Eddie didn't suddenly become fearless. He didn't stop being scared. He chose to act despite the fear. That's the difference. When Eddie turned back in the Upside Down, guitar in hand, he wasn't thinking about being remembered. He wasn't thinking about being a hero. He was thinking about one thing: not running anymore. That moment redefined what bravery meant in Stranger Things. Bravery wasn't about powers. It wasn't about strength. It was about choice. And the show made a brutal decision. It showed us that courage doesn't guarantee survival. That single moment changed the tone of the entire series. After Eddie's death, the Upside Down didn't feel like an adventure anymore. It felt like war. Suddenly, the danger wasn't symbolic. It wasn't exaggerated. It was permanent. Anyone could die. And that realization followed every scene that came after. But Eddie's death didn't just affect the story. It changed the characters, especially Dustin. Dustin had always been the emotional anchor of the group, the humor, the optimism. Eddie gave Dustin someone older to look up to, someone who understood him. When Eddie died, Dustin didn't just lose a friend. He lost safety. The scene with Eddie's uncle is one of the most important moments in the entire show, not because of what happens, but because of what doesn't. No monsters, no music, no escape, just a kid explaining loss to someone who will never get answers. That scene grounded Stranger Things in a way monsters never could. It forced the audience to sit with grief, real grief. And then there's the most painful part of Eddie's story. Eddie Munson never got justice. The town never learned the truth. There was no apology, no redemption. To Hawkins, Eddie Munson died a villain. And that's not a writing accident. That's a statement. Because sometimes the truth doesn't win. Sometimes the hero isn't remembered as one. Eddie's death hurts because it's unfair, because it mirrors real life. How many people are judged before they're known? How many are blamed because it's easier than understanding? Eddie represented all of them. By killing Eddie, Stranger Things crossed a line it can never uncross. The show stopped promising safety, stopped promising comfort. It told its audience something honest. Good people don't always survive. Sacrifice isn't always rewarded. and courage can still end in tragedy. Eddie Munson didn't die to shock the audience. He died to change the story. After Eddie, Stranger Things felt heavier, more serious, more real. Every risk felt final. Every goodbye felt dangerous. Eddie Munson didn't just fight monsters. He challenged the idea that only certain people get to be heroes. And that's why his death changed the entire show. Because once Stranger Things chose to let Eddie die, it chose realism over comfort. And there was no going back.